On this episode of Locked On Angels, Caden Dana struggled this spring, and he said he knows why. Plus, the Halos have an opening in the bullpen now and on the 40-man roster, so who fills that? And we're going to talk about yesterday's spring game. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube and leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
It's our fourth season here as the host of Locked On Angels. We're talking Angels baseball 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, every single weekday. Any way you slice it, you can count on us being there for you, talking Halos baseball. On today's show, why did Caden Dana struggle this spring, and who's going to be in the bullpen now that Hans Crouse will not? We'll talk about that coming up. But first, Mike, let's talk about yesterday's game versus the White Sox.
Jose Soriano started this game. Johnny went 2 2/3, 4 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, and 5 Ks. He hit 99 on his four-seam fastball in this game, was in the high 90s most of the game. Soriano had a ton of movement on his pitches as well. One of his knuckle curves was dropping 9 inches to 12 inches during the game, which means it starts at eye level and then it just drops out of sight. And it was also moving side to side between 7 and 13 inches, which means it starts down the middle and then it moves dramatically to either side. So this is why Soriano gets a lot of swings and misses. This is why his stuff is deadly, right? But it's also why he'll have some games where he walks a lot of guys, or he has games where he gives up a lot of hits, because that stuff is so wicked. But if he doesn't have control of it, then it's going to be really, really hard for him to get through the inning. And we saw a bit of that yesterday and this spring, and he's just got to continue to work on how he can control this, his release point being the same, and getting a good feel for each of those pitches. But overall, John, really, really good stuff from Jose Soriano this spring, and especially from yesterday's start.
Yeah, he had about 70 pitches, Mike, and you could see that reflected in the fact that, there were 4 hits, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, as you mentioned, and over that 2 2/3 of an inning. So to me, I just think that it's coming into spring training, maintaining control and getting a grasp on all of your pitches. I think that's the way he's got to move forward. That's what we need out of Jose Soriano. And so hopefully he can hone that in before the season starts. It is nice that he's getting a full spring training as a starter versus last year, where they kind of had to move some pieces around. And we just got the news in spring training last year that he was probably going to be tried out as a starter. So great to see that the stuff is still there and everything that we like about Jose Soriano's pitching repertoire is still there, but it's just a matter of honing it in and keeping that wicked stuff in the zone and controllable.
Yeah, speaking of wicked stuff, Ben Joyce was wicked awesome in this game. He went an inning, struck out 3. Ben Joyce's 3 strikeouts today. Great tweet from Brent McGuire. 94.3 mile per hour splinker. That was a swing. 102.5 mile per hour four-seamer, a swing. And then 103.6 miles per hour on a four-seamer. Got him looking, John.
Yeah. Can I say, I don't want to punch down on anybody. And so far, at least the last time I looked, Brandon Drury, who signed a minor league deal with the White Sox, was having a really great spring. And so, I wish him the best. He was, great for us. I know that he was, it's very obvious to me he was hurt last year, considering it seems like he's back to where he was. But man, I'm just so glad he wasn't able to go off on Halos pitching yesterday. And he struck out 3 times, and one of them was to Ben Joyce. So again, don't want to punch down or, say anything bad about anybody, but the fact is like, if anybody's going to go off on the Angels and hit 3 home runs, it was going to be Brandon Drury. However, 3 strikeouts made the pitching look really good yesterday.
Yeah, and John, you mentioned something off air. We were texting back and forth during the game yesterday, and then you tweeted this from @LockedOnAngels on Twitter about Nolan Schanuel. So why don't you talk about what you noticed about his at-bat yesterday?
Yeah, so it all started with, I believe it was Andres, one of our everydayers who commented on YouTube, said, do you think Schanuel has lowered his hands or should lower his hand placement? And so since that comment, I was just trying to think about, okay, what's changed with Nolan Schanuel? And then I believe it was yesterday we brought that up. And I said, Mike, it seemed like he's incorporating a leg kick. And the thing is, he's done that in the past. So just trying to zero in on the changes he's been trying out in spring. He had a pitch or an at-bat against Justin Dunn, the pitcher for the White Sox, and he did a leg kick on each pitch. Now, he didn't end up swinging at any of them because it was a 4-pitch walk, but he did do the leg kick on his big hits that he's gotten recently, the home run and that big double from the other day. And then I looked at like some highlights from last year, and there was sometimes where he did a leg kick, and then sometimes it was just a big twist, Mike. It was just, rotating that upper torso and everything, and not very much movement on the front foot. And he also stole a base in this game, but I want to go back to him at the plate. There was a pitch where it was up and he didn't lift that leg. So I don't know, maybe he's being choosy with it. I also think that leg kick could be a mechanism to help him not be out in front, as he's talked about in spring, because of course the bat speed has increased for him. That's something he's been working on. I have said that the swing length, he needs to shorten that up time and time again. But I understand that if you're catching stuff out in front, then perhaps that leg kick is a little bit of a mechanism that helps him stay back on the ball a little bit better.
We've talked often on this show about the hitting approach for the Halos the last few years. We've been here for 4 years. We've done podcasts for 5 years now. And I remember a lot of conversations just about our frustration with previous hitting coaches and even previous pitching coaches. And we referenced a bit of this on yesterday's show.
By the way, did you see Matt Wise yesterday in the game?
Yes, I did. What I love about what I'm seeing from the Angels hitters so far is something that you and I and our everydayers have harped on pretty often. And that is a one size fits all approach doesn't work.
Right.
It's a approach that says, everybody do this. Let's figure it out together. Right. Even when Marcus Timms was here, it was like, hey, everybody just attack and just attack and hit the first pitch or try to hit a home run. What I appreciate about Johnny Washington and Tim Laker is that they have really honed in on what these guys do well. And I think, John, my point for all of this is I think that that's why we're seeing the adjustments in leg kicks and in hands often with each of these players. And so I know that we've harped on Joe Adell and like, hey, he had the leg kick, now he has the toe tap. And we're like, bro, you got to pick one because you haven't earned the right to be able to say, hey, I'm going to do this. But now I'm going to change my tune. And I think what Nolan Schanuel did yesterday has changed my tune, because what I'm seeing from these guys is that they have decided to approach each pitch differently or each at bat differently. And that's something that we've been asking for years.
Yeah.
And now they're starting to do that. And I know that the success rate has not been super terrific this spring so far, but I do believe that it's giving them a bit more freedom to feel out the pitcher, feel out the at-bat, feel out the pitches that he's throwing, and then whatever's comfortable for them in their approach, they're given permission, right? To do what it is that you feel would be best for you in this at-bat. And then if it doesn't work, there's conversations happening in the dugout, and they're saying, hey, okay, let's work on this. Let's adjust this. Go back to the leg kick, right? But I love that there's a bit of freedom with these Halo players. And that's really what letting the kids play last year does for this team, because now they're not just like trying to learn how to hit. Now they're learning how to hit effectively and how to approach the pitchers in an effective way. And I love that, John.
Yeah. I'm glad you said all that, because if you were to watch yesterday's game, you'd go, where the heck was the offense, right? And the Angels had plenty of base runners, but it was a 1-1 tie with the White Sox.
Woo!
And Moncada was the first one to get a hit in this one. But the thing that I noticed yesterday is just a lot of hard hit stuff right at people. Luis Robert looked like, prime Mike Trout out there running things down in center field. So that was kind of the story on the offensive side. But Mike, there was an interesting part to this, and it goes back to the pitching. And this is what I feel like we could take away from this game that was not, no offense, 1-1.
Right.
And it was that the Angels pitchers got themselves into a lot of jams that they had to pitch out of.
Right.
And you saw that with Soriano, and I saw that with Brock Burke, saw that with Zephyr John. Ben Joyce, I know, had a hit against him as well. And so the White Sox ended up leaving 16 on base, 1 for 16 with runners in scoring position throughout the game. And that's not great that the Halos had that many on base. But what I think we can take away from this is that it did give them a chance to work with runners on, try to pitch out of it. And the truth is they succeeded, other than the run that Soriano gave up. Despite how many guys were on base for the White Sox, it was almost like, did you put yourself in a jam just to practice and get out of it yourself? And so that was interesting to me, but obviously that's not what they did, but it ended up happening that way. And I think it just gave me a little reassurance that, Burke could get out of a situation. Zephyr John could get out of a situation as well. And they looked good doing it. And I noticed what you said the other day, and it was Travis d'Arnaud and Chucky Robinson meeting their pitchers, their battery mates at the first base side or third base side, which side they're on, and walking in with them and discussing it. I thought that was really great to see. Shows some veteran leadership and some good camaraderie between the catcher and the pitcher. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up on the show, what's up with Caden Dana and why did he struggle this spring? He knows what it is and what it isn't, and we're going to share both coming right up.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, hey, where'd the heck all my money go? I think everybody can relate to that. Our everydayers can. Between dining out, online shopping, other purchases, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts. You can set goals and stay on the same page without all of the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. You're welcome. That's monarchmoney.com. Use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Mike, we got some news yesterday that I was quite surprised with. I'd say that you'd be surprised with it too, right? We got word that the Halos optioned Hans Crouse to AAA Salt Lake because that felt like a lock for bullpen this season, right? But so far this spring, he does have a 9.64 ERA in 6 games, 7 strikeouts, 3 walks in 4 2/3 innings pitched. His whip is 1.9. That's almost 2 hitters on base per inning that he's pitched. 6 hits in those 4 2/3 with 1 home run. Now, he did strike out 5 of the first batters he faced in spring, but since then, he's allowed 5 earned runs in those 4 2/3 innings over the next 4 games with 3 walks. Wash said that he saw a little bit of inconsistency with Hans Crouse, didn't he?
Yeah, he said he'd have a day where he was really, really, really doing what he wants to do. And then there are some days where it was really difficult. And he said he's going to help us. Wash said that. And at some point, he'll be back this year. Now, last season, Crouse went 4-3 with a 2.84 ERA in 25 1/3 innings pitched. Had an ERA plus of 149, 34 Ks, 17 walks. And he finished the year strong, John, with an 0-1 record, 2.45 ERA, and 7 1/3 innings pitched, 6 Ks, and a 1.23 WHIP. But remember, he did go up and down a lot. They did utilize his options a lot. And when he wasn't good, he really wasn't good. And that was around July. Although in July, he had a 4.2 ERA. So he wasn't awful, but he wasn't good in moments when you needed him to be really good. And so there does seem to be some development that he needs to bring. But it is interesting because the assumption for a lot of us was that he was a lock, or he was at least somebody that was leaning towards being in this bullpen. So right now, John, the Halos have 5 spots that are locked in a bullpen of 8 people. So that's Kenley Jansen, Ben Joyce, Brock Burke, Ryan Zephyr-John, and Jose Quijada. Now, unfortunately, one of the other spots of the 8, number 6, will probably be Jose Suarez, which, by the way, shout out to Locked On Everydayer Martin Dusold, who texted me on, I think it was Wednesday, and he said, "Look at our boy," because he can't stand him, just like we can't stand him. But that does leave 2 spots open. And, John, this move puts the Halos' overall roster at 39 players. So there is a roster spot open. And so my question to you is, who takes those last 2 spots? And is there someone out in the ether that they could possibly sign, that they could possibly bring in? I know that Finnegan's signed with the Nats, so he's not somebody that is going to be out there. But talk to me about what your thoughts are right now about this Angel bullpen.
Yeah, starting to be sad that Hunter Strickland signed with the Rangers yesterday too. So,
right.
Yeah, that's somebody that I thought, you could bring him back if you wanted to. I think it was another minor league deal, Mike, so it would have been really affordable and not much of a risk there. But look, I think for me, I think it's got to be Garrett McDaniels. I know that he's the Rule 5 pick, and you would assume that he'd make it, but that's not always the case. But I really like what he's shown in spring. Now, he is another lefty, and this is also why I was surprised to see Hans Crouse be sent to AAA, because he's one of the few righties in the bullpen. It was, in our hypothetical bullpen, it was 4-4. But now that puts the handedness into question. Mike, I also, look, I don't know if I've liked what I've seen out of Jose Quijada either this spring, but you don't have any more options with him. So he's either got to be on the roster or you got to DFA him. So I don't know. I'm kind of hung up on the idea of like, wow, this is really lefty heavy. And now Garrett McDaniels would be one of those lefties as well. Talk to me about Ryan Johnson and your opinion on him, because he's not thrown a professional game other than these spring games, but to go from college to MLB and possibly be in the bullpen, or is he more of somebody we should be thinking about for the rotation? What do you say?
I think you got to put him in the bullpen. And I think he is somebody who has shown so far that he can handle it. He's brand new to this. I know he hasn't thrown a professional pitch, but you're the Angels, and this is what you do with some of those young guys. So if you're going to put Zach Neto on this roster way before expectations, and if you're going to do that with Schanuel, then why not with Ryan Johnson? And he has so far shown a great mentality on the mound. I said the other day, it just looks like he doesn't care. And what I meant by that is he doesn't care about the situation. He doesn't care about the crowd noise. He doesn't care who's at the plate. He's just going to go up there and he's going to throw. He just looks like a dude, a jock, right? I'm going to go out there and throw. When you need me to throw, I'm out there, right? And he's not thrown by anything or anyone. That's the vibe that I get from him. And I just love his quick windup. John, if he is somebody that we can count on in this bullpen, I could see him being a potential 7th inning guy with Ben Joyce 8th inning, and then, of course, Kenley Jansen 9th inning, and those will be interchangeable because Ben Joyce will probably get some opportunities to close. But Ryan Johnson so far looks really good. His windup is deceptive. It's very, very quick, and he really hides the ball well. You can't pick it up until the very end of his stretch. And so I think you give him a shot, and because there's only 39 on the 40-man roster, I think maybe the Angels are trending in that direction. They're going to add him to the 40-man, and then he's going to be somebody that's in this bullpen. I would move in that direction ASAP. I don't think I would wait on him, and unless he completely falls apart this spring, but I don't think it would be bad to take a shot with Ryan Johnson.
It's interesting. I'm just checking out roster resource on FanGraphs, And it seems like they've put Michael Peterson in the spot that Hans Crouse was in. Now, that's not really an official thing or an official announcement or anything, but that's somebody who is on the 40 man and could be that guy who comes in middle relief. Mike, does this open up the possibility of one of Reed Detmers or Jack Ohanowitz in the bullpen now that Hans Crouse is out of the bullpen? Do you think, we've been talking about how do they get both these guys on the roster? Should they? Could they? Who's in the rotation? Who's not? Is this the opportunity to have somebody like, I don't know, Kohanowitz in the bullpen now?
Well, Sam Blum tweeted yesterday from The Athletic. Somebody was talking about, like how it's a travesty that these two guys aren't in the lineup and that they should trade Tyler Anderson. And so he brought up a good point. He said they had like 18 starting pitchers last year, and so his point was,
I know.
Yeah. His point was these guys are going to start. Like these guys will be in the rotation at some point. And so I think if traditional baseball minds lead the way here, you're going to have Reed Detmers at number 5, and you're going to have Kohanowitz start in AAA. Mm-hmm. That's just going to be a reality. My guess is that that's where everybody lands. If you don't, it doesn't make sense to have Suarez and Detmers and or Kohanowitz on this pitching staff all at the same time.
Right.
Because one of them is going to start. What's the role for the non-starter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Suarez is going to be your long guy, and Kohanowitz is going to be who? Or Detmers is going to be who? Right? Like it just doesn't make sense to me. And you want those guys to be consistent and be out there every 5 days. I don't think you want one of them to be a long starter. I know I've thrown that out there before just to keep them on the roster, but I don't think you want that unless you DFA Suarez and then you have Reed and or Kohanowitz and or maybe Kyle Hendricks, depending on how he does.
Right.
Be that long relief guy, having 6 starters, right? Like that might be an option. And so I don't know if that's the way that they're going to go. It doesn't seem like that's the way that they're going to go. It seems more like they're going to add more bullpen pieces, and it seems like they're going to add more ready now bullpen pieces. So I would even push back on my own argument that Ryan Johnson would be great, because it seems like they'll go in a traditional baseball mindset way, which I don't know if I agree with, but I do believe that that's where the Angels are trending.
I think it makes sense to this conversation begins and ends with DFAing Jose Suarez. That's basically what it comes down to. I'm just kidding. Yeah. But no, you're right. Like, I think in a traditional sense, I think you're right. One of those guys is going to end up in the rotation. One's going to end up starting in AAA, however that may look. And to know who they're going with in this bullpen in hopefully Garrett McDaniels, because again, I think he's got some great stuff. The one thing I don't want to see Victor Mederos out of the bullpen. I think they're doing him a huge disservice by having him come out of the bullpen when all his time in the minors, for the most part, has been as a starter and has had success as a starter. Yeah. But it seems like every time he comes out of the pen, it's always been an issue. So I think they really need to, don't do him a disservice and put him in this bullpen unless he becomes like a new long man or even gets a spot in the rotation at some point during the season.
Well, no matter who the Angels have in the starting rotation or in the bullpen, I know I'm going to be at a game. My brother John's going to be sitting next to me. We're not going to be talking because that's how we watch Angels baseball. And our mouths are going to be full of wonderful pistachios, and our hands as well, because we love this snack. It's one of our favorite snacks of all time. It's delicious, it's nutritious, and it's filled with a good source of protein. In fact, they're one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value, and they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to keep you going all day long. John, if it's an extra inning game, we're going to be great because we're going to have our wonderful pistachios.
That's right.
We're not going to be tired.
Nice and full, baby.
Right. There's the no-shell variety, all sorts of varieties of flavors. I love the original. It's probably my favorite. John, you have the chili flavor. Was that what you were noshing on the other day?
Sweet chili, yes.
Woo-hoo! That was my nickname in high school. And then there's also the in-shelled option, which is fun for games because then you can open it up, crack it open, throw in a pistachio, and then throw it on the ground. I actually will throw the whole thing in my mouth just to get the salt in my mouth, and then I'll use my teeth to open it up. Got to go to the dentist. Not a great thing. Get snackin. Get crackin' with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
Mike, Caden Dana struggled this spring, and we're going to be diving into what he believes are the reasons for that struggle this season. Dana said that it didn't have anything to do with arm discomfort or any sort of injury. He did notice during his game against the Guardians that he left after some initial struggles, and then he went back to the mound the following inning, and that didn't go as well. And so Ron Washington noticed that, mid-spring arm fatigue could have been the culprit. But then Dana said, my arm's definitely not dead. I feel fine. So what's the issue, Mike?
Well, Dana believes a piece of it is that he was coming out of the bullpen. He said it's very different for him. And he said, I'm still trying to adjust to that. I felt a little out of rhythm. And I just remember when we had Davis Daniel on this show last year.
Yeah.
And he talked about how difficult it is as a starter to come out of the bullpen when your rhythm is to be a starter. And when he knew he was starting, it changed everything for him, how he slept, how he woke up, how he ate breakfast. Like he got into the details of that. And I think that's true for a lot of pitchers. And Caden Dana said, it's true for me. I just felt out of rhythm. And he said he's working on, making sure to be a starter and be a consistent starter. But if the Angels need him at any point, he is going to be available to come out of the pen. But he's a starter. He's got a starter mentality. And that is something that he's wanting to make sure that he doesn't get out of rhythm with so that he can be consistent in the game.
Okay, so I said I was going to be furious yesterday if there was no mention of release point. Did he talk about that at all? Okay.
He did. He also said that he needs to be more consistent with his arm slot. Dana said the name of the game is throwing strikes, and that's not what I've done. And he mentioned that Wash was wanting him to figure that out and working with Barry Enright to figure that out. And something you and I pointed out on this show, that when he was throwing his fastball, his arm slot was inconsistent above his head. When he was throwing his off-speed stuff, he had two different places where he was throwing. It was almost like, it was about a foot difference, I believe, what the graphic on FanGraphs said, right?
Yeah, it was a StatCast, and I think the curveball was up here, and the slider was about a foot below that. So, just inconsistent delivery and release point. And so hitters can see that. Hitters know when you're going to throw a certain kind of pitch based on where things come out of the hand and, at what level of height they come out of the hand. So I am glad to know that the arm slot situation is being dealt with now. Hopefully that does go hand in hand with release point.
Right.
I know that, it's kind of all the same thing, but at the same time, I just want to make sure that it's all cleaned up for Caden Dana, right?
Yeah. And here's why I think this is really important. We mentioned on yesterday's show that Wash is looking for three things from pitchers: listen, learn, adjust. Listen, learn, adjust. Sounds like Caden Dana's doing that, right? And the Caden Danas and the Jack Kahanowitzes of the world, those guys that they've drafted recently, like it feels like they're figuring that stuff out, and they're listening, they're learning, and they're adjusting. So the fact that Dana understands, like, hey, my body's more inclined to be a starter and be in the rhythm of being a starter than coming out of the bullpen, that kind of messes with me a bit, messes with my rhythm. I love that he's figuring that out, but also saying, I'm going to be available if I need to be a bullpen guy for a short-term time. I will do that. But then I also love that he recognized his consistent arm slot needs to be consistent, and it's inconsistent right now. And so I love that he is listening, he's learning, and he's adjusting, and apparently listening to Locked On Angels, which is great.
I would hope so. Yeah. and the fact is he's newly 21 years old, and it seems like to recognize the things that caused him to struggle, whether that's coming out of the bullpen, arm slot, release point, that sort of thing. I think that speaks to a young maturity and somebody you really want to invest in. And that's why, I'm not in any hurry to rush him up. And even going back to last season, there was a lot of talk about, could we see him in the majors? And then of course he had those handful of appearances at the end of the season. I thought those were harmless because it was like, the Angels are out of it. Give him a look, see what he's got, see how he handles it. He's been dominating Double-A, so let him have a look-see up in the majors. But I'm not in a rush because, again, this is a high school guy the Angels took, and that is rare these days, right, Mike? Because they're
Right.
getting those college guys. They're getting those ready now players. And I think Caden Dana is somebody you can spend a little bit more time with and not have to worry about his development. Let him figure these things out. So whether it's AA, whether it's AAA, there are certainly things that he can improve upon. Now, real quick, I think it's interesting for him to identify coming out of the bullpen as an issue. Does that provide a knock against, what we were talking about earlier with either Detmers or Kowanowitz or somebody coming out of the bullpen instead of starting? What do you say?
Yeah, the Angels have also been notorious putting people in positions that they aren't really prepared for. It's why
Yeah.
Taylor Ward took a long time, because he had 45 different positions before he came up, right? And I think that when you put somebody in a position that they just haven't been prepared for, that's a problem. And I know that the knock could be against the young players. You're bringing them up too soon. They're not prepared for it. Luckily, they've really drafted some good players that have performed pretty good. Zach Neto's been really excellent, right? And so I don't think that you want somebody like Caden Dana to be put in a position where he's coming out of the bullpen. It does seem like it works against what you're trying to do with him. Now, I know when they brought Reed in the last of the 4 innings a few days ago, like he's just getting his throws in, and they were doing that with Caden Dana as well.
Right.
But I do think with these younger guys, you almost need to just act like it's the regular season and let them be the first guy to go out there. And even if it's a split squad game or if it's a side field game, let them get prepared that way so that they have the mindset and the mentality and they have the rhythm, their bodies in rhythm to do what it is that they've trained themselves to do.
Yeah, if there's one thing we've learned watching all of these Angels pitchers over spring and even into last year, it's that rhythm and routine are super necessary for them to have success in the upcoming season.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball with our friends Matt and Dom. Fantasy baseball draft season is here, and you can be the most informed fan and set yourself up for a league win by just watching Locked On Fantasy Baseball. You can catch the show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, be sure you give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to today's show on YouTube. Get in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you. We always do our best to try to get back to everybody. Mike, what do we have on deck for Friday's show?
We're going to zoom out and we're going to put the conversation around this year's starting rotation, put it in perspective for us and for everyone. The questions that we've had coming into 2024 might be the same ones that we have coming into 2025. But the answers, Johnny, are very, very different. And we're going to give you those answers and tell you what we mean tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
Well, color me intrigued, my friend. I love that. All right, friends, we hope you'll come back and join us for that conversation. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Friday.
Color me intrigued.
Intrigued. I got a crying baby to deal with. I got to go.
Go, daddy, go.